The champagne glass shattered against marble as laughter erupted across the ballroom. Nathan Cole stood frozen, his daughter's small hand trembling in his own, while 300 of the city's wealthiest citizens watched two men publicly destroy what remained of his dignity. But it wasn't Nathan they were truly mocking. It was the woman sitting alone at table 7, the one everyone had already forgotten. What none of them knew, what would turn this night of cruelty into something none of them would ever forget, was that the forgotten woman wasn't forgotten at all. She owned everything they were standing on. Before we begin, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels, and if it moves you, hit that like button. Now, let's get into this. The Ashford Crown Hotel didn't just host events, it made statements. Tonight's statement involved 2 ice sculptures shaped like swans, 47 bottles of Dom Perignon, and enough Belgian chocolate to fund a small country's deficit. The Winter Charity Gala wasn't about charity, not really. It was about being seen, about reminding everyone else exactly where you stood in the carefully maintained hierarchy of people who mattered. Nathan Cole didn't matter. He knew this the moment he stepped through the brass-handled doors with Emma's hand clutched in his, her Mary Jane's clicking against floors that probably cost more than his annual salary. The navy suit he wore had been his father's, altered twice, dry cleaned 3 times, still carrying that faint smell of mothballs no amount of fabric spray could quite eliminate. "Daddy, why is everyone staring?" Emma's voice cut through the piano music drifting from somewhere behind the champagne fountain. She was 6, perceptive in that brutal way children are before the world teaches them to pretend not to notice things. "They're not staring, sweetheart. They're just looking." "That's the same thing." Nathan squeezed her hand. She wasn't wrong. He'd received the invitation 3 weeks ago, delivered to his work locker at the Riverside Luxury Apartments, where he fixed broken toilets and replaced air filters for people who didn't know his name. The envelope had been cream-colored, expensive. His supervisor, Marcus Chen, had been standing right there when he opened it. "Holy shit, Cole! Someone actually invited you to the Ashford thing?" Nathan had read it twice, looking for the punchline. "Says I'm invited as a community representative. For the Maintenance Workers Union." "Community representative?" Marcus had laughed, not unkindly. "That's corporate speak for, we need to look inclusive for the photos. You going?" Nathan had looked at the invitation again, at the embossed lettering and the promise of an evening in a world he'd only ever cleaned up after. "I don't know. I'd need to find someone to watch Emma. Bring her. It says in guest, doesn't it?" It had. And now here they were, standing in a ballroom that looked like someone had turned a jewelry box inside out, surrounded by people wearing watches that cost more than his truck. Emma tugged his sleeve. "Can we find our table?" "Yeah, let's—" "Nathan Cole. Jesus Christ, they actually let you in." The voice came from behind him, familiar in the worst way. Nathan turned slowly, his stomach already sinking. Derek Vaughn stood there in a tuxedo that had definitely not belonged to his father, his face flushed with champagne, and that particular brand of cruelty that came from never being told no. Beside him were 2 other men from the building, Jason Park and Tommy Sullivan, both dressed like they belonged here, both looking at Nathan like he was a joke they'd already started laughing at. "Guys, Nathan kept his voice neutral. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Didn't expect to see us." Derek's eyebrows shot up in exaggerated surprise. "Brother, I've been coming to this thing for 5 years. My firm handles half the real estate portfolios in this room." He looked down at Emma, then back at Nathan. "What's your excuse?" "I was invited." "As what, the help?" Jason laughed, sharp and too loud. Several heads turned toward them. Emma pressed closer to Nathan's leg. He put his hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. "As a community representative," he said evenly. "Now, if you'll excuse us, community representative." Derek rolled the words around like he was tasting wine. "That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Hey, Tommy, you hear that? Nathan here represents the community." Tommy grinned, mean and lazy. "Which community? Single dads who can't afford a new suit?" The laughter spread, not just from the 3 of them, but from the small crowd that had started gathering, drawn by the promise of entertainment. Nathan felt Emma's hand tighten in his. "Daddy, it's okay, sweetheart." But it wasn't okay. Derek was already scanning the room, his eyes landing on something, or someone, that made his smile widen into something uglier. "Oh man, oh, this is perfect." He pointed across the ballroom toward a table near the windows, where a woman sat alone, her dark hair pulled back, her posture so carefully controlled it looked painful. "You see her?" Nathan followed his gaze. The woman was maybe 30, wearing a black dress that was elegant but not showy, her face turned slightly away from the crowd. There was something isolated about her, like she'd drawn a circle around herself that nobody was allowed to cross. "That's Victoria Hale," Derek continued, his voice carrying. "Used to be somebody like 10 years ago. Her family had money, threw these big parties, acted like they owned half the city." He took a sip of champagne, deliberate and slow. "Then Daddy's company went under. Fraud, embezzlement, the whole 9 yards. Family lost everything. She disappeared for a while, and now—" He gestured toward her with his glass. "Now she shows up to these things like she still matters. It's honestly sad." Jason leaned in, his voice dropping to a stage whisper that somehow carried further than normal speaking. "I heard she's still trying to network, like anyone gives a shit. Like anyone's going to forget who she used to be." "Who she used to be," Tommy repeated, "or who her daddy actually was." More laughter. The circle around them had grown. Nathan could feel the attention, the way a crowd gathered around cruelty like it was a performance they'd paid to see. Derek turned back to Nathan, and something in his expression shifted. It was the look of someone who'd just had an idea they found hilarious. "You know what, Cole? I think we've been looking at this all wrong." He raised his voice, addressing the growing audience. "Here we've got two people who nobody really wants at this party. The broke single dad in the dead man's suit, and the fallen princess who can't accept that her time is over." He paused for effect. "Maybe they should sit together. You know, keep each other company, birds of a feather and all that." The suggestion hung in the air for a moment, and then someone laughed. Then someone else. Then it became a ripple of amusement spreading through the crowd. People who should have known better, people who did know better, and didn't care. "Oh my God, yes," a woman in diamonds said, her voice bright with malicious delight. "That's actually perfect." "Someone should make that happen," another voice added. "I'll donate an extra 1,000 to the charity if Cole actually goes and sits with her," Derek announced loudly. "Come on, Nathan. Do it for the kids, right? Isn't that what tonight's about?" Emma pulled on Nathan's jacket. "Daddy, I want to go." Nathan looked down at his daughter. Her eyes were wide, scared in that way that made his chest hurt. She didn't understand what was happening, not really, but she understood enough. She understood that people were being mean, that her father was the target, that something was wrong. He could leave. He should leave. Take Emma's hand, walk out of this ballroom, drive home, forget this whole stupid night ever happened. But then he looked across the room at Victoria Hale. She was still sitting alone, but her posture had changed. Her shoulders were tighter, her head turned further away, like she was trying to make herself smaller. She'd heard. Of course she'd heard. The whole room had heard. And nobody was doing anything about it. Nathan felt something shift in his chest, something tired and angry, and completely done with the way the world worked. "Okay," he said quietly. Derek blinked. "What?" "Okay." Nathan spoke louder now, clear enough that the crowd could hear him. "I'll sit with her." The laughter changed tone, became uncertain. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to get embarrassed, maybe angry, definitely leave. He wasn't supposed to agree. "Seriously?" Jason's smile faltered. "You said nobody wants to sit with her, right? And nobody wants to sit with me." Nathan shrugged, the gesture more tired than casual. "So yeah, makes sense." He started walking before anyone could respond, Emma's hand still in his, cutting through the crowd that parted uncertainly around them. Behind him, he could hear Derek's voice, trying to regain control of the narrative. "Oh shit, he's actually doing it. This is going to be amazing. Someone film this," but Nathan ignored them. He focused on the woman at table 7, on the way her hands were clasped together so tightly her knuckles had gone white, on the careful blankness of her expression that he recognized because he'd worn it himself 1,000 times. The walk across the ballroom felt longer than it should have. Every eye in the room was on them now, every conversation had stopped. The piano music continued, oblivious and inappropriate. Victoria Hale didn't look up as he approached. "Miss Hale?" Her jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. "My name is Nathan Cole. This is my daughter Emma." He kept his voice gentle, the same tone he used when Emma had nightmares. I know you don't know me. And I know what just happened, what they said, about both of us. Finally, she looked at him. Her eyes were dark, carefully controlled, but there was something raw underneath. Something hurt. Are you here to make it worse? Her voice was quiet, refined, with an edge that suggested she'd been hurt enough times to expect more. No. Nathan pulled out the chair across from her. I'm here because I'm tired of people being cruel and calling it entertainment. He paused. Would it be all right if we sat with you? Victoria stared at him for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Nathan sat down, helping Emma into the chair beside him. The little girl looked at Victoria with open curiosity, the kind 6-year-olds had before they learned to hide what they were thinking. You have a pretty dress, Emma said. Victoria's expression flickered, something briefly crossing her face that might have been surprise. Thank you. I wanted to wear my purple dress, but Daddy said this one was better for fancy parties. Emma smoothed down her white dress, which Nathan had bought on sale at Target 2 months ago. Do you like fancy parties? The question was so earnest, so completely without guile, that Victoria almost smiled. Almost. Not particularly, she said. Me neither. They're boring. Emma? Nathan said quietly. They are, Daddy. Everyone just stands around drinking and talking about boring things. She's not wrong, Victoria said, and this time she did smile, just slightly. She looked at Nathan. You didn't have to do this. I know. They're going to make it worse for you now. Derek Vaughn isn't the type to let something go. Nathan glanced back toward where Derek and his friend stood, still watching, still waiting for something to happen. I don't really care what Derek Vaughn thinks. You should. He has influence. So do you, apparently. At least you used to. It was a risk, acknowledging what had been said. Victoria's expression hardened immediately, walls slamming back into place. I'm sorry, Nathan said quickly. I didn't mean to. It's fine. Her voice was flat. Everyone knows the story. The Hale family tragedy. We're practically a cautionary tale at this point. Emma was watching them both, her head turning back and forth like she was following a tennis match. Nathan reached over and gently adjusted her napkin, giving her something to focus on besides the tension. For what it's worth, he said carefully, I don't know your story. I mean, I heard what those guys said, but I don't know you. And Emma definitely doesn't. Daddy fixes things, Emma offered helpfully. Air conditioners and toilets and doors that stick. Once he fixed a whole elevator by himself. Victoria looked at Emma, then at Nathan. You're a maintenance worker. Technician, Nathan corrected mildly. But yeah, basically. And you brought your daughter to a charity gala. The invitation said, and guest. She's my guest. Something shifted in Victoria's expression, softening just slightly. That's actually kind of sweet. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation for being a terrible parent to maintain. The words came out before Nathan could stop them. Too bitter, too honest. Victoria's eyes sharpened, seeing something in him that he hadn't meant to show. Who says that? People who think they know better. My ex-wife's lawyer, mainly. Apparently bringing a 6-year-old to a charity event is evidence of poor judgment. Your ex-wife's lawyer is at this party? No, but someone who knows him probably is. Someone who'll mention it. Someone who'll make sure it gets back to her. Nathan shook his head. Sorry, you don't need to hear about my problems. You're sitting here listening to mine. I'm sitting here because those assholes decided to make both of us their entertainment for the night. Might as well be miserable together. Victoria laughed. It was short, surprised, like she hadn't expected it. That's a terrible sales pitch for conversation. I'm better at fixing toilets than making small talk. Clearly. They sat in silence for a moment, but it was different now. Less hostile. The ballroom around them had started returning to normal, or at least to the pretense of normal. People were moving to their tables. The program was apparently about to start. But Nathan could still feel eyes on them, still hear the occasional whisper. A waiter appeared beside their table, professional and impersonal. Can I get you anything to drink? Water? Nathan said. Whiskey, Victoria said. Neat. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Emma watched him go, then turned back to Victoria. What's whiskey? Something adults drink when they're tired. Are you tired? Victoria's smile was sad. Very. Me too, Emma said seriously. Daddy made me take a nap before we came, but I'm still tired. Fancy parties are exhausting. You know what, kid? Victoria's expression softened completely for the first time. You might be the smartest person in this room. The waiter returned with their drinks. Nathan sipped his water, watching Derek and his friends over the rim of his glass. They were still watching, still waiting. Jason had his phone out, probably texting someone. Derek was laughing with a group of men in expensive suits, periodically glancing over like Nathan was a science experiment he was monitoring. They're not going to let this go, Victoria said quietly, following his gaze. Probably not. Derek Vaughn is persistent. When he decides someone is entertainment, he doesn't stop until he's bored. How long does that usually take? Depends on how much reaction he gets. She took a sip of her whiskey. If you ignore him, he'll escalate. If you respond, he'll escalate. There's no winning strategy. Sounds like you've dealt with him before. Victoria's expression went dark. His firm handled my family's bankruptcy proceedings. He was just a junior associate then, but he made sure everyone knew every detail, every embarrassing revelation, every debt, every stupid decision my father made. She stared into her glass. He turned our tragedy into his networking opportunity. Nathan felt anger twist in his gut. Jesus. He's not unique. This whole room is full of Derek Vaughns. People who see other people's pain as opportunity. She looked at him directly. That's why I don't understand why you're sitting here. You had an escape route. You could have left. So could you. I'm here for business reasons. On a Saturday night at a charity gala? Victoria's smile was thin. Everything is business when you're trying to rebuild from nothing. Before Nathan could respond, the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage at the front of the ballroom, where a man in his 60s stood behind a microphone, his smile practiced and empty. Good evening, everyone. I'm Richard Morrison, and on behalf of the Children's Future Foundation, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. The speech washed over Nathan like background noise. He'd heard versions of it before. The importance of giving back, the children who needed help, the tax-deductible generosity of everyone in attendance. It was all true, and none of it was real. These people weren't here for charity. They were here to be seen being charitable, which was different. Emma leaned against his arm, already bored. Nathan put his arm around her shoulders, feeling her warmth against his side. Across the table, Victoria sat perfectly still, her posture impeccable, her face a mask of polite attention. But Nathan noticed her hands still clasped too tightly, still betraying the tension she refused to show anywhere else. The speech ended. Applause filled the room, automatic and brief. Dinner service began and waiters appeared with plates of food that looked more like art than meals. Emma stared at her plate. Daddy, what is this? I think it's chicken. It doesn't look like chicken. It's fancy chicken. I don't want fancy chicken. I want regular chicken. Victoria made a sound that might have been a laugh. I don't think regular chicken is available at the Ashford Crown. That's dumb, Emma said with 6-year-old certainty. Chicken is chicken. You'd think so, wouldn't you? Nathan cut Emma's chicken into smaller pieces, a familiar routine that felt absurd in this setting. Across the room he saw Derek watching, saying something to Jason that made them both laugh. They're planning something, Victoria said quietly. I know. You should leave. Take your daughter and leave before... Before what? Nathan met her eyes. Before they humiliate us more? Before they make a bigger scene? They've already done that. Leaving now just gives them what they want. And staying gives them more ammunition. Maybe, but I'm tired of running from people like Derek Vaughn. He paused. And I'm tired of watching people sit alone because everyone else decided they don't matter. Victoria went very still. You don't know me. No, but I know what it feels like to be the person everyone looks at and decides isn't worth their time. Because you're a single father? Because I'm a lot of things that don't fit what people expect. A single father, a maintenance worker, a guy who didn't go to college, a guy whose ex-wife left him for someone with better prospects. He shrugged. Take your pick. There's plenty of reasons people use to decide I'm not worth knowing. That's their loss. The words came out sharp, almost angry. Nathan looked at her in surprise. Victoria seemed equally surprised by her own vehemence. She looked away, taking a drink of whiskey. I just mean, people are idiots. They make judgments based on surfaces without bothering to see what's underneath. Yeah, Nathan said quietly. They do. Dinner continued around them. Conversations rose and fell, laughter came in waves, the piano player shifted from classical to something jazzy. Emma ate her fancy chicken without complaint once it was cut into pieces she recognized, and asked for more of the bread rolls that came in a basket that looked like it was woven from gold. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the tension at table 7 began to ease. Victoria asked Emma about school. Emma told her about her teacher, Miss Rodriguez, who was nice but gave too much homework. Nathan asked Victoria about her work. She was vague, mentioning consulting and investment, nothing specific. They talked about the city, about the weather, about the kind of safe, meaningless topics people use to fill space. But underneath it was something else. Something neither of them acknowledged, but both felt. A recognition, maybe. Of shared experience, of knowing what it meant to be judged and found wanting by people who didn't matter, but somehow had all the power. The dinner plates were cleared. Dessert appeared, something involving chocolate and gold leaf that Emma ate with wide-eyed delight. And then Derek Vaughn stood up. Nathan saw it happening, saw Derek push back his chair and start walking toward their table, with Jason and Tommy flanking him like backup. Saw the phone in Jason's hand, recording. Saw the crowd starting to notice, starting to turn their attention back toward the entertainment. Victoria tensed. Here we go. Daddy? Emma looked up, chocolate on her face. It's okay, sweetheart. But it wasn't okay because Derek was at their table now, looming over them with that smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Cole? Ms. Hale. Hope you enjoyed dinner. He leaned on the table, casual and threatening at once. I've been thinking about our earlier conversation. I wasn't aware we had a conversation, Victoria said coldly. Well, more of a public observation, really, about how you two make such a perfect pair. Derek looked around at the growing audience, playing to them. The has-been and the never was. It's actually kind of beautiful when you think about it. Derek, Nathan started. No, hear me out, because I've been watching you all night, sitting here like you belong, like anyone gives a shit about either of you. His voice rose, carrying. And I realized something. You're both delusional. You both think that if you just show up, if you just pretend hard enough, people will forget who you really are. Victoria's hand trembled slightly as she set down her glass. And who am I, Derek? You're the daughter of a criminal. You're a reminder of everything that happens when people get too arrogant, when they think the rules don't apply to them. He leaned closer. Your father destroyed lives. He stole from people who trusted him. And you have the nerve to show your face in public like you deserve forgiveness. My father's crimes are not mine. No, but his shame is. And that stench doesn't wash off, Victoria. Trust me, we've all noticed. The room had gone quiet again. Nathan could see people with their phones out now, multiple cameras pointed at their table. This was going viral, no question. This was going to be the story people told about tonight. Emma was crying quietly, tears running down her face. Nathan pulled her close, fury building in his chest. You've made your point, he said, his voice tight. Now leave her alone. Or what? Derek laughed. You'll fight me? You'll defend her honor? Come on, Cole, you're a maintenance worker. You fix toilets. You think anyone here is scared of you? I don't need anyone to be scared of me. No, you just need people to pity you. Poor Nathan, raising his daughter all alone because his wife was smart enough to leave. Derek's eyes glittered with malice. Tell me, does Emma know why Mommy left? Does she know it's because Daddy wasn't good enough? Nathan stood up so fast his chair fell backward. The room held its breath. Derek didn't move, but something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty, maybe. A recognition that he'd pushed too far. My daughter, Nathan said, his voice deadly quiet, is none of your business. My marriage is none of your business. And whether you think I belong here or not is absolutely none of your goddamn business. Nathan, Victoria started to stand. No. He held up a hand. I'm done. I'm done with people like Derek Vaughn deciding who matters and who doesn't. I'm done with watching people get hurt for entertainment. He looked around at the crowd, at all the phones recording, at all the faces watching. You want to know something? I wasn't sure about coming tonight. I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I didn't belong. Maybe I was setting myself up for exactly this. You were, Derek said. But you know what I realized? Nathan continued, ignoring him. I'd rather be the person being humiliated for doing something kind than the person doing the humiliating and calling it a joke. The silence was absolute now. Nathan looked down at Victoria, who was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then he looked at Emma, who had stopped crying and was watching him with something like awe. "I'm going to answer your question from before," he said to Derek. "The one about whether I'd still sit with Victoria if I had other choices. And the answer is yes. Absolutely yes. Because I'd rather sit beside someone being hurt than beside the people causing the hurt. Every single time." He reached down and took Emma's hand. "Come on, sweetheart, let's go home." "Wait!" Victoria stood up, her voice cutting through the silence. "Nathan, wait." He turned back. She was standing now, her posture different, not defensive anymore. Something else. Something stronger. "Thank you," she said simply. Nathan nodded. Then he walked away, Emma's hand in his, leaving Victoria Hale standing alone at table 7 in a ballroom full of people who suddenly couldn't quite meet her eyes. But as he reached the doors, as he was about to leave this whole nightmare behind, Emma pulled on his hand. "Daddy, wait." "What is it, sweetheart?" Emma let go of his hand and ran back toward the table, her white dress bright against the dark carpet. Nathan watched, confused, as she reached Victoria and pulled something from her small purse, a wrapped piece of candy, slightly crushed. "Here," Emma said, holding it up. "My daddy gives me these when I'm sad. They help." Victoria looked down at the little girl, at the offered candy, and something in her carefully controlled expression broke completely. She took the candy with trembling fingers and pulled Emma into a sudden tight hug. When she let go, there were tears on her face. Emma ran back to Nathan, who picked her up and held her close. Over her head, he met Victoria's eyes one last time. Then he turned and walked out of the Ashford Crown Hotel, leaving behind a ballroom full of people who were only just beginning to understand what they'd witnessed. The parking garage was cold and echoed with their footsteps. Nathan carried Emma now, her head heavy against his shoulder, the adrenaline finally wearing off and leaving her exhausted. His hands were shaking slightly as he fumbled with his keys, the navy suit jacket suddenly feeling too tight across his shoulders. "Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart." "Did I do something wrong? With the candy?" Nathan stopped walking. He shifted Emma in his arms so he could see her face, smudged with chocolate and tears. "No, you did something really, really right." "Then why did we have to leave? How did you explain cruelty to a 6-year-old? How did you tell your daughter that the world was full of Derek Vaughns, people who found pleasure in other people's pain, and that sometimes the only thing you could do was walk away? Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is know when to go home," he said finally. Emma considered this, her small face serious. "Miss Victoria was sad." "I know. Are we going to see her again?" Nathan unlocked the truck, an ancient Ford F-150 that burned oil and made concerning noises on cold mornings. "I don't think so, baby." "Why not?" "Because she lives in a different world than us." He buckled Emma into her booster seat and drove home through streets that were mostly empty at this hour. The radio played country music, sad songs about lost love and broken dreams, and Nathan turned it off. He'd had enough sadness for one night. Their apartment was in a complex on the east side, the kind of place where the parking lot had more potholes than pavement, and someone was always fighting loud enough to hear through the walls. Nathan carried Emma upstairs, unlocked 3 separate locks, and laid her on her bed still in her white dress. "Can I sleep in this?" "You'll wrinkle it." "I don't care, I feel like a princess." Nathan smiled despite everything. "Okay, but just tonight." He pulled off her Mary Janes and covered her with the comforter, the one with faded Disney characters that used to be bright before 100 washes. Emma was asleep before he reached the door. Nathan went to the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water from the tap. His phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. He pulled it out, already knowing what he'd find. 17 text messages, most from numbers he didn't recognize, 3 from Marcus, 1 from his ex-wife's sister, which was never a good sign. He opened Marcus's messages first. "Holy shit, man, you're all over Twitter." "Derek Vaughn is losing his mind. Call me when you get this." Nathan opened Twitter. He didn't use it much, just scrolled occasionally when he couldn't sleep. But now his feed was full of videos. Videos of him. Videos of Derek. Videos of that moment when he'd stood up and said what everyone in that ballroom needed to hear but was too comfortable to say themselves. The hashtag trending was hashtag table7. He watched one video, filmed from someone's phone at a nearby table. The quality was shaky, but the audio was clear. He watched himself stand up, watched Derek's face change, watched the moment his own voice cut through the room like a knife. I'd rather sit beside someone being hurt than beside the people causing the hurt. The video had 43,000 views already. The comments were a mix of support and cruelty, people he'd never met deciding who he was based on 90 seconds of footage. This guy is my hero. Oh please, he's just virtue signaling. Anyone know who the woman is? Update. Woman is Victoria Hale, daughter of convicted fraudster. So two losers found each other. Cute. That little girl giving her candy broke my heart. Nathan closed Twitter and opened the message from his ex-wife's sister. Jessica wants to talk to you about tonight. Call her. He didn't call. He turned off his phone instead and sat in the dark kitchen of his apartment, listening to the sound of someone's TV through the wall and wondering how the hell a simple evening had turned into this. Sleep didn't come easy. When it did, it brought dreams of ballrooms and cruel laughter and Victoria Hale's face when Emma had given her that candy, like something inside her had cracked open. Morning came too early. Emma woke him up by jumping on his bed, still in her white dress, which was now thoroughly wrinkled. Daddy, I'm hungry. Nathan made pancakes from the box mix, coffee from yesterday's grounds. His phone was still off. The Sunday morning stretched ahead of them, quiet and ordinary, and he was grateful for it. They were halfway through breakfast when someone knocked on the door. Nathan froze. Nobody knocked on Sunday mornings. Nobody knocked at all unless it was the landlord or someone trying to serve him papers. Stay here, he told Emma. He checked the peephole and saw Marcus standing in the hallway, holding 2 coffees from the good place downtown, the one that charged $6 for a medium. Nathan opened the door. It's Sunday. I know, can I come in? They sat at the small kitchen table while Emma watched cartoons in the living room. Marcus pushed one of the coffees toward Nathan. You look like hell. Thanks. Have you been online? Briefly. Then I turned my phone off. Marcus pulled out his own phone and started scrolling. You're viral, man, like really viral. The video from last night has over 200,000 views now. There are news articles. Someone made a TikTok compilation of different angles. That's great. I always wanted to be famous for having the worst night of my life. It's not all bad. A lot of people are on your side. There's a whole thread about what an asshole Derek Vaughn is. Someone dug up that his firm is being investigated for discrimination. Nathan sipped the expensive coffee. It tasted like regret. What about Victoria? What about her? Are they talking about her? Are people being cruel? Marcus hesitated. Some. But mostly people are confused. Nobody seems to know much about her beyond the family history. She doesn't have social media, doesn't do interviews. It's like she disappeared after her dad's conviction and only shows up at these events. He paused. Why do you care? Because she was sitting there being humiliated and nobody did anything. Everyone just watched. You did something. I sat down. That's not heroic. That's basic human decency. Yeah, well, apparently basic human decency is rare enough to go viral. Marcus put his phone away. Listen, I didn't come here just to show you Twitter. Derek Vaughn called the building manager last night. Nathan's stomach dropped. What? He filed a complaint, said you were harassing him at a private event, said you became aggressive and threatened him. That's bullshit. I know it's bullshit. The manager knows it's bullshit. But Derek's firm owns the building we work in, Nathan. They own 6 buildings in the city. They have influence. So what are you saying? Marcus looked uncomfortable. I'm saying be careful. Take a few days off. Let this blow over. Don't give them any excuse to make this about your job instead of about what actually happened. Nathan thought about bills, about rent, about Emma's school expenses, and the truck that needed new brakes and the electricity bill that was already overdue. I can't afford to take days off. I'll cover your shifts. I'll tell the manager you're sick. Marcus, just take the help, man. Please. Marcus stood up. And maybe turn your phone back on. I heard someone's trying to reach you. After Marcus left, Nathan sat for a long time staring at his phone. Finally, he turned it on. 63 notifications. He ignored most of them, but one email caught his attention. The sender was listed as V. Hale, His finger hovered over it for a moment before he opened it. Mr. Cole, I hope you don't mind me contacting you. I got your email from the gala's registration list. I wanted to thank you properly for last night and to apologize for the situation you found yourself in because of your kindness. I've been watching the news coverage. I know Derek Vaughn has filed complaints and is trying to create problems for you. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. Also, please thank Emma for the candy. I still have it. Victoria Hale. Nathan read it 3 times. Then he wrote back, deleting and rewriting each sentence multiple times before settling on something simple. Ms. Hale, you don't owe me an apology. What happened wasn't your fault. I'm glad Emma's candy helped, even a little bit. Nathan. He hit send before he could overthink it. The response came 20 minutes later. Would you be willing to meet for coffee? I'd like to talk to you about something. Nathan stared at the message. Every practical part of his brain said no. Said to let this whole thing fade away, to go back to his normal life, to stop getting involved with people from worlds he didn't belong in. But he remembered Victoria's face. The way she'd held Emma. The tears she'd tried so hard to hide. When? This afternoon? There's a cafe on Morrison Street. The Blue Door. 2 p.m. I'll be there. Finding a babysitter on short notice on a Sunday was nearly impossible, but Nathan's neighbor, Mrs. Chen, owed him for fixing her garbage disposal last month. She agreed to watch Emma for a few hours, though she gave him a look that suggested she'd seen the videos too. The Blue Door Cafe was the kind of place Nathan normally avoided. Small tables, expensive pastries in glass cases, artwork on the walls that probably cost more than his truck. He felt out of place in his jeans and flannel shirt, but at least this time he'd chosen his own clothes. Victoria was already there, sitting at a corner table wearing dark jeans and a cream sweater that looked soft and expensive. Her hair was down today, loose around her shoulders, and she looked younger without the formal dress and careful posture. She stood when she saw him. Thank you for coming. Yeah, of course. Nathan sat across from her, suddenly awkward. How are you? I've been better. You? Same. A waitress appeared, young and pierced and bored-looking. Nathan ordered black coffee. Victoria asked for tea. I wanted to apologize, Victoria said once they were alone again. You already did. In the email. No, I mean, really apologize. Face to face. She wrapped her hands around her teacup, even though it hadn't arrived yet, like she needed something to hold on to. What Derek did to you, the complaints he filed, the attention you're getting, that's all because you sat with me. Because you were kind to me. That's on Derek, not you. But it wouldn't have happened if what? If you hadn't existed, if you hadn't been at that gala? Nathan leaned forward. Victoria, those men would have found someone to humiliate. That's what they do. If it wasn't you, it would have been someone else. And I still would have said something. She studied his face like she was looking for a lie. Why? Why what? Why would you still have said something? You don't know me. You had no obligation. You could have just left. Nathan thought about it. About all the times he'd seen cruelty and walked away because it wasn't his business, wasn't his problem. About the slow erosion of caring that happened when you were just trying to survive. I have a daughter, he said finally, and I want her to grow up believing that people help each other, that when you see someone being hurt, you do something about it, even if it's small, even if it costs you. He shrugged. I can't teach her that if I don't live it. The waitress returned with their drinks. Victoria added honey to her tea with careful precision, the spoon clinking against the cup. I looked you up, she said, after last night. Yeah? Find anything interesting? Not much. You're not on social media, no LinkedIn, no digital footprint beyond a few mentions in the Riverside Apartments newsletter. She smiled slightly. You're surprisingly invisible for someone who just went viral. I like my privacy. So do I. Which is why what I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this table. She took a breath. The story Derek told about me last night wasn't wrong, exactly. My father did commit fraud. He did go to prison. My family did lose everything, but what Derek didn't mention is that I've spent the last 8 years rebuilding. Not the family name, that's gone, but myself. Rebuilding how? Victoria's smile was sharp. I started with nothing. Literally nothing. I was 22 when my father was convicted. 22 and suddenly toxic. Nobody would hire me, nobody would rent to me. I had a degree from an expensive university that meant nothing because everyone knew my last name. So what did you do? I changed it, legally. Became Victoria Hayes instead of Victoria Hale. Started over in a different city. Worked 3 jobs. Saved every penny. Learned everything I could about business and investment and how money actually works. She paused. And slowly, very slowly, I built something. What kind of something? A company. Well, several companies, technically. Real estate, mainly. Hotels, luxury properties. She met his eyes directly. I own the Ashford Crown Hotel, Nathan. I bought it 6 months ago through a holding company. Nobody knows. Nobody at that gala had any idea they were standing in my building, mocking me while I owned the floor they were standing on. Nathan felt his brain trying to process this information and failing. You own the Ashford Crown and 4 other properties in 3 states, but I keep it quiet. I use intermediaries. I don't want the attention. I don't want people knowing I'm successful because then they'll dig into how I got there and they'll find the connection to my father, and suddenly every business deal becomes about the scandal instead of the actual work. But why are you telling me this? Victoria set down her teacup. Because I want to help you. Derek Vaughn is going to try to destroy you. That's what he does. He finds people he perceives as weak and he grinds them down until they disappear. I've seen him do it to others. I almost let him do it to me. I'm not asking you to fight my battles. I know, but I'm offering anyway. She pulled a business card from her purse and slid it across the table. This is my lawyer. She's handled worse than Derek Vaughn. If he escalates, if he tries to get you fired or causes problems with your custody situation, call her. She'll handle it. Nathan picked up the card. Evelyn Park, attorney at law. An address downtown in one of the expensive buildings. I can't afford... You're not paying. I am. Consider it payment for what you did last night. I sat at a table with you. That's not worth a lawyer. You sat at a table with me when everyone else in that room decided I wasn't worth the effort. You stood up to Derek when he tried to humiliate both of us. And your daughter gave me a piece of candy that I've been carrying in my pocket since last night because it's the first genuinely kind thing anyone has done for me in longer than I can remember. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. So yes, Nathan, it's worth a lawyer. It's worth a lot more than that. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the cafe hummed with Sunday afternoon energy. A couple argued quietly in the corner. A student typed furiously on a laptop. The espresso machine hissed and steamed. Can I ask you something? Nathan said. Sure. Why were you at that gala? If you own the hotel, if you could have just avoided the whole thing, why show up? Oh, Victoria's expression went distant. Because I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of letting people like Derek Vaughn make me feel ashamed of who I am. I thought maybe if I showed up, if I faced them all, it would prove something, that I'd moved past it. She laughed bitterly. Stupid, right? No, human. Same thing sometimes. Nathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and saw his ex-wife's name. He declined the call. Victoria noticed. Problems? My ex. She's been trying to reach me since the videos went viral. Her lawyer's probably advising her that this is evidence of instability or bad judgment or whatever they're claiming this week. Custody battle? More like custody war. She left 2 years ago. Married a guy with money, a nice house, all the things I couldn't give her. Now she's decided Emma would be better off with them. More stable environment, better schools, that whole speech. What does Emma want? Nathan smiled despite everything. Emma wants to stay with her dad, who lets her eat pancakes for dinner and doesn't make her take piano lessons she hates. Smart kid. Yeah, she is. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from a number he didn't recognize. This is Evelyn Park. Ms. Hale asked me to reach out. I've already begun documenting Derek Vaughn's harassment and filing counter complaints. Call me tomorrow and we'll discuss strategy. Nathan showed the message to Victoria. Your lawyer works fast. I called her this morning after I saw what Derek was doing. Victoria's expression was fierce. I meant what I said. He's not going to destroy you for being decent. He might try. Let him try. I've got better resources than he does. Nathan looked at this woman across from him, this person who'd been humiliated in a ballroom full of people and was now offering to fight his battles with lawyers and money and a quiet fury that was somehow more intimidating than Derek's loud cruelty. "I don't understand you," he said honestly. "What's to understand? You're rich, successful. You could be anywhere right now, doing anything. Instead, you're in a cafe with a maintenance worker, offering to pay for legal help you can't afford. Why?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "When my father went to prison, when everything fell apart, people I thought were friends disappeared overnight. People I'd known my whole life crossed the street to avoid talking to me. I went to a fundraiser once, about a year after the conviction, thinking maybe enough time had passed. Someone dumped a drink on me, called me a thief's daughter. Security escorted me out while people applauded. Jesus. I went home that night and I sat in my apartment, this terrible studio in the worst part of town, the only place that would rent to me. And I thought about giving up, about disappearing completely, about changing my name and moving somewhere nobody knew the story and just existing." She met his eyes. "But I didn't, because somewhere in all that pain, I decided that the world needed more people who did the right thing, even when it cost them. And last night, watching you stand up for me, for yourself, for what was right, that reminded me why I made that choice." Nathan didn't know what to say to that, didn't know how to respond to being someone's reminder that decency still existed. "Plus," Victoria added, her tone lighter, "Emma's candy is really good. What brand is that?" "Dollar store mint swirls. She's obsessed with them." "Tell her she has excellent taste." They talked for another hour, about nothing important mostly, about the city, about coffee preferences, about the kind of small talk that wasn't really small when you were learning how someone's mind worked. Victoria was funny when she relaxed, sharp and observational in a way that suggested she spent a lot of time watching people. Nathan found himself laughing more than he had in months. When they finally left, the sun was starting to set, painting Morrison Street in orange light. Nathan walked Victoria to her car, a black Mercedes that was nice but not showy, the kind of rich person car that didn't announce itself. "Thank you," she said, "for meeting me, for listening. Thank you for the lawyer, and for, I don't know, being honest. It's rare, isn't it? Honesty." "Yeah, it is." Victoria hesitated, then pulled out her phone. "Can I give you my number? Not for anything weird, just in case you need anything, or in case Derek escalates, or, yeah, I'd like that." They exchanged numbers, fingers fumbling slightly with their phones like teenagers instead of adults in their 30s. When it was done, Victoria smiled. "Take care of yourself, Nathan Cole." "You too, Victoria Hale." He watched her drive away, then walked to his truck. His phone immediately buzzed with messages he'd been ignoring. One from his ex-wife, 3 from unknown numbers, one from Marcus asking if he was okay, and one from Victoria, sent just seconds ago. "Thank you again. For everything. Emma's lucky to have you." Nathan sat in his truck for a moment, watching the sunset fade, thinking about ballrooms and cruelty and the strange way kindness could change everything. Then he drove home to his daughter, who was waiting with stories about her afternoon with Mrs. Chen and questions about where he'd been and whether he'd seen Miss Victoria again. "I did," he told her as he made dinner, spaghetti from a jar, nothing fancy. "She wanted me to tell you that you have excellent taste in candy." Emma beamed. "I knew it. I'm going to bring her more next time." "I don't know if there's going to be a next time, sweetheart." "There will be," Emma said with 6-year-old certainty. "She needs friends. Everyone needs friends." Nathan couldn't argue with that logic. That night, after Emma was asleep, Nathan lay in bed scrolling through the messages he'd been avoiding. Most were garbage, reporters wanting interviews, strangers with opinions, a few genuinely kind people offering support, but one made him pause. It was from a corporate number, formal and cold. "Mr. Cole, this is Human Resources for Riverside Property Management. We need to schedule a meeting regarding recent conduct concerns. Please contact us Monday morning." He stared at the message, feeling his chest tighten. This was it. This was Derek's influence reaching into his actual life, trying to take away the one thing Nathan had that was stable. His phone buzzed. "Victoria. Can't sleep either?" Nathan smiled despite everything. "How'd you know?" "Lucky guess. Or maybe I'm learning to read you." "That's dangerous." "Probably." Want to hear something crazy? Always, I'm thinking about going public with the company, with who I am, with all of it. Nathan sat up in bed. Why? Because I'm tired of hiding. Because you stood up in that ballroom and said what everyone needed to hear, and it made me realize I've been letting Derek Vaughn and people like him control my life for 8 years. Because maybe it's time to stop being ashamed of surviving. That's not crazy. That's brave. Or stupid. Sometimes they're the same thing. He could almost hear her laugh through the screen. Get some sleep, Nathan. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. Isn't it always? Yes. But at least now we're not facing it alone. Nathan turned off his phone and lay in the dark, thinking about meetings with HR and lawyers he couldn't afford, and ex-wives who wanted to take his daughter away. Thinking about viral videos and strangers' opinions, and the weight of doing the right thing when it would have been so much easier to just walk away. But mostly, he thought about Victoria Hale, sitting alone at table 7, and the way Emma's simple gesture had cracked something open in all of them. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe everyone needed friends, even people who'd learned to survive alone. Monday morning came with rain, the kind that turned the city gray and made everything feel heavier than it already was. Nathan dropped Emma at school early, watching her run through the drops with her backpack bouncing, and tried not to think about the HR meeting waiting for him. His phone had been ringing since 6 a.m. He'd ignored all of it except one text from Victoria. Good luck today. Remember, you have a lawyer now. Use her. The Riverside Property Management offices were downtown in a building Nathan had helped maintain but never actually worked in. Corporate was separate from the maintenance crews, existing in a different world of conference rooms and ergonomic chairs and coffee that didn't taste like it had been brewed in 1987. The receptionist looked at him like he'd tracked mud across her desk. Name? Nathan Cole. I have a meeting with HR. 4th floor, conference room B. The elevator smelled like cleaning solution and anxiety. Nathan's reflection in the polished doors showed a man who looked exactly like what he was. Working class, out of place, bracing for impact. Conference room B held 3 people. Margaret Reeves from HR, a woman in her 50s with a helmet of gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd already decided how this conversation would end. Beside her sat someone Nathan didn't recognize, a younger man in an expensive suit holding a tablet. And at the head of the table, looking thoroughly pleased with himself, was Derek Vaughn. Nathan stopped in the doorway. What the hell is he doing here? Mr. Cole, please sit down. Margaret gestured to the empty chair facing all of them. It felt deliberate, the positioning, 3 against 1. Not until someone tells me why Derek Vaughn is in a meeting about my employment. Mr. Vaughn is here as a representative of Vaughn and Associates, the man with the tablet said. His voice was smooth, practiced. His firm handles legal counsel for Riverside Property Management. I'm James Chen, senior partner. You're Derek's lawyer. I'm the firm's representative, yes. Nathan looked at Derek, who smiled back with all the warmth of a snake. Sit down, Cole. Let's keep this civil. Every instinct Nathan had screamed at him to leave, to walk out before this got worse, before they could pin whatever narrative they'd constructed onto him and make it stick. But he thought about Emma, about rent, about the fact that walking away would just prove whatever point they were trying to make. He sat down. Margaret opened a file folder with bureaucratic precision. Mr. Cole, we've received several complaints regarding your conduct at a company-sponsored event on Saturday evening. Company-sponsored? I wasn't there representing the company. The invitation was extended through your union membership, which is affiliated with Riverside Property Management. Therefore, your behavior reflects on the organization. My behavior. Nathan kept his voice level. You mean sitting at a table and having a conversation? James Chen tapped his tablet. We have video evidence of you verbally confronting Mr. Vaughn in an aggressive manner. Multiple witnesses reported that you stood up suddenly, raised your voice, and made threatening gestures. I stood up because he was harassing a woman and insulting my daughter. That's your interpretation of events, Derek said, leaning back in his chair. From my perspective, I was having a conversation with colleagues when you became hostile and confrontational. Nathan looked at Margaret. You've seen the videos, right? The ones that have gone viral. You can see exactly what happened. We've reviewed footage, yes. And while the situation appears to have been tense, the fact remains that you created a scene at a high-profile charity event. You drew negative attention to yourself and, by extension, to Riverside Property Management. So this is about PR, about not wanting to look bad. This is about professional conduct, Margaret said, and about maintaining relationships with our business partners. Business partners like Vaughn and Associates? The silence answered his question. Nathan pulled out his phone and found Evelyn Park's number. He dialed it right there at the table, watching Derek's smile falter slightly. Nathan? Evelyn's voice was crisp, alert. Are you in the meeting? Yeah, turns out Derek Vaughn is here representing his firm as Riverside's legal counsel. Seems like a conflict of interest. Put me on speaker. Nathan did. Evelyn's voice filled the conference room with the authority of someone who'd fought bigger battles than this. This is Evelyn Park, representing Mr. Cole. I'm going to need everyone's names and positions for the record. Margaret's expression went carefully neutral. This is an internal HR matter, Ms. Park. There's no need for legal representation. Mr. Cole has a right to counsel in any meeting that could affect his employment. Now, names and positions, please. They went around the table, each introduction more reluctant than the last. Nathan watched Derek's face, saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. Ms. Park, James Chen said, we're simply addressing conduct concerns. This doesn't need to be adversarial. Then I'm sure you won't mind that I'm recording this conversation. Mr. Cole, please inform them that you consent to recording. I consent. Margaret looked at James, who looked at Derek. The dynamic in the room had shifted, and everyone could feel it. Perhaps we should reschedule, Margaret said. Give everyone time to prepare proper documentation. Or, Evelyn's voice cut through, you could acknowledge that this meeting is retaliation for Mr. Cole's protected speech. Drop whatever performance you're staging and move on before I file a formal complaint with the labor board. Protected speech? Derek's laugh was sharp. He caused a scene at a private event. He responded to harassment, on video, with witnesses. And now you're attempting to use your business relationship with his employer to punish him for it. That's textbook retaliation, Mr. Vaughn. I've built entire cases on less. The silence stretched. Rain hit the windows, a steady rhythm that filled the space between words. Finally, James Chen stood up. I think Ms. Park is right. This meeting should be rescheduled. We need to review our position. There's nothing to review, Derek said. Derek. James's voice carried a warning. Not now. Derek's jaw tightened, but he stood. He looked at Nathan with undisguised hatred. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Evelyn's voice was steel. And Mr. Vaughn? If you contact Mr. Cole, his employer, his daughter's school, or anyone else in his life, I will bury you in paperwork until your firm drops you just to stop the bleeding. Are we clear? Derek walked out without answering. James followed, already on his phone. Margaret gathered her papers with shaking hands. Mr. Cole, you're free to return to work. We'll be in touch regarding next steps. What next steps? Nathan asked. That remains to be determined. She left quickly, like the room had become contaminated. Nathan sat alone at the conference table, phone still on speaker, heart pounding. Evelyn? Still here? You did good, Nathan. Didn't lose your temper, followed my instructions. That's going to matter. They're not done. You know that, right? Of course they're not. Derek Vaughn doesn't strike me as someone who handles losing well, but now we have documentation. We have them on record attempting retaliation. That's ammunition. She paused. How are you holding up? I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. Go home. Take the day. I'll send you a summary of next steps by email. I can't afford to miss work. Nathan, you can't afford not to. If you go back on the floor right now, someone's going to provoke you. Someone's going to push until you react. And then Derek gets exactly what he wants. Her voice softened. Take the day. Be with your daughter. Let me handle the legal parts. She hung up before he could argue. Nathan left the building through a side exit, avoiding the main lobby where he might run into Derek or anyone else. The rain had picked up, soaking through his jacket by the time he reached his truck. He sat in the driver's seat, water dripping down his face, hands still shaking with adrenaline. His phone rang. Victoria. How bad was it? Derek was there, with his lawyer. They tried to make it look like I was the problem. Past tense. They tried? Evelyn showed up on speaker, basically told them to back off or she'd destroy them. That's my girl. Victoria sounded pleased. Where are you now? Sitting in my truck in a parking garage, dripping wet and questioning every decision I've made in the past 48 hours. Want to get lunch? Nathan laughed, surprised. It's 10 a.m. Then coffee or whiskey. I don't judge. Victoria, I'm serious. You just survived an ambush. You shouldn't be alone right now. I'm fine. Nathan Cole, you are many things, but fine is not one of them. Her voice was gentle. Please, let me buy you coffee. Or at least let me sit with you while you process the fact that Derek Vaughn is a vindictive asshole. I already knew that part. Then let me tell you about the press conference I'm planning for tomorrow. The one where I'm going public with everything. That got his attention. You're serious about that? Meeting me and finding out? They met at the same cafe, the Blue Door, because it was starting to feel like neutral territory. Victoria was already there, wearing jeans and a sweater that looked lived in, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked less like a CEO and more like a regular person, and Nathan wondered if that was deliberate. She stood when she saw him, and before he could say anything, she pulled him into a hug. It surprised him. Victoria didn't seem like a hugger, but her arms were solid around him, and he realized she was shaking slightly. Are you okay? He asked. I was worried. When Evelyn called and told me what was happening, I was worried I don't know, I was just worried. They sat down. The same waitress from yesterday gave them a knowing look and brought coffee without being asked. Victoria wrapped her hands around her cup. Tell me everything. So he did. The ambush set up. Derek's smug face, Margaret's bureaucratic dance, the moment Evelyn's voice had changed everything. Victoria listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. They're trying to isolate you, she said when he finished. Take away your job, your stability, make it harder to fight back. It's a standard playbook. You've seen it before. I've lived it. After my father's conviction, people came after me in every way they could, tried to prove I was complicit, that I'd benefited from his fraud, tried to take away the few things I had left. She stared into her coffee. They wanted me to disappear, to stop being a reminder that the system they all benefited from had cracks in it. But you didn't disappear. No, I got angry instead, and I used that anger to build something they couldn't touch. She looked up at him. Which brings me to tomorrow, the press conference. I'm announcing that I'm the owner of Ashford Crown Hotels, all of them, and I'm doing it at the Ashford Crown, in the same ballroom where Derek humiliated both of us. Nathan felt his stomach drop. Victoria, Are you sure? No, I'm terrified, but I'm doing it anyway. She pulled out her phone and showed him a document. This is my statement. I've been working on it since yesterday. Want to hear it? Yeah, of course. Victoria cleared her throat and began reading. Her voice was steady, but Nathan could hear the emotion underneath. 8 years ago, my family lost everything. My father's crimes destroyed lives, including mine. I was 22 years old, and overnight I became toxic. People who'd known me my entire life treated me like a criminal. I lost my friends, my reputation, my future. I changed my name. I started over. And for 8 years, I've been rebuilding in Quince, afraid that if anyone knew who I really was, they'd take it all away again. She paused, looking at Nathan. This is where it gets risky. Keep going, but I'm done being afraid. I'm done letting people like Derek Vaughn profit from my shame. On Saturday night, at a charity gala in my own hotel, I was publicly mocked for being a failure, for being forgotten, for not mattering anymore. And I sat there and took it because I thought that was the price of surviving. Her voice cracked slightly. Then a man I'd never met, a single father with his 6-year-old daughter, chose to sit beside me. Not because he knew who I was, not because he wanted anything from me, but because he believed that standing against cruelty mattered more than staying safe. Nathan felt his throat tighten. His name is Nathan Cole. He's a maintenance technician. He's exactly the kind of person that room full of wealthy, influential people decided didn't matter. And he showed more courage in 5 minutes than most of them will show in their entire lives. Victoria's hands were shaking now. So I'm standing up. I'm revealing who I am, what I've built, and I'm using my platform to say what needs to be said. That dignity isn't measured in bank accounts. That kindness isn't weakness. And that people like Nathan Cole, people who do the right thing when it costs them everything, are worth 1,000 Derek Vaughns. The cafe had gone quiet around them. Nathan realized other people were listening, drawn by Victoria's voice and the raw honesty in it. "You can't say all that," he said quietly. "Why not?" "Because you'll put a target on my back. Derek already hates me. If you make me part of your public statement, he already has a target on you, Nathan. He's already trying to destroy you. At least this way, everyone knows why." Victoria leaned forward. "And this way, you're not alone in it. I don't want to be your symbol. You're not. You're my friend, and I'm fighting for my friend." The word hung between them. Friend. It felt too small for what had happened between them, too simple for the complexity of two strangers who'd found each other in the wreckage of a cruel night. "This is going to get messy," Nathan said. "It already is messy. Emma, my daughter, she's going to see all this. My ex-wife is going to use it in court. They're going to say I'm unstable, that I'm making poor choices. Or," Victoria said, "they're going to see a father who stood up for what was right. A man who taught his daughter that kindness matters. A person worth knowing." Nathan wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that doing the right thing would somehow work out, that the universe rewarded decency instead of punishing it. But he'd lived too long in the real world to buy that fantasy. "What do you need from me?" he asked instead. "Be there tomorrow, at the press conference. Stand with me." "Victoria, say, I know it's a lot. I know it's scary. But I need you to understand something." She reached across the table and took his hand. "You changed my life on Saturday. Not because you solved my problems or rescued me or any of that fairy tale bullshit, but because you reminded me what I was fighting for, why I spent 8 years clawing my way back. And I need you there tomorrow to remind me again, because I'm going to stand in front of cameras and reporters and everyone who wrote me off, and I'm going to be terrified." "Ite yismato is boss." Her hand was warm in his, steady despite the trembling he could feel underneath. "Okay," Nathan said. "I'll be there." Victoria's smile was shaky but real. "Thank you." They talked for another hour, planning logistics and going over her statement, Victoria making adjustments based on Nathan's feedback. She was surprisingly uncertain about the whole thing, second-guessing her word choices, asking repeatedly if she sounded too angry or too emotional or too bitter. "You sound human," Nathan told her. "That's what matters. What if nobody cares? What if I reveal everything and people just shrug and move on? Then at least you'll know you tried. At least you won't spend the next 8 years wondering what would have happened if you'd been brave." Victoria looked at him for a long moment. "You're wiser than you give yourself credit for. I'm just tired of being scared all the time." "Yeah, me too." Nathan's phone buzzed. A message from the school. Emma had asked the office to call him because she forgot her lunch. "I have to go," he said, standing up. "Emma needs me." "Of course, go." Victoria stood too. "Nathan, thank you for agreeing to tomorrow, for all of it. Thank me after we survive it." He picked up Emma's lunch from home, a sandwich he'd made that morning and forgotten to pack, and drove to her school. The secretary gave him a look that suggested she'd seen the videos too, but she didn't say anything, just pointed him toward Emma's classroom. Emma was sitting in the hallway when he got there, her teacher Mrs. Rodriguez standing nearby. "Daddy!" Emma jumped up and ran to him. "Hey, sweetheart, forgot something?" "I'm sorry. I was thinking about the story you told this morning, and I forgot to check my backpack." Nathan handed her the lunch bag. Emma took it, then hesitated. "Daddy, some kids were asking about the videos, about the party." Nathan's chest tightened. "What did they say?" "They said you were famous, and that you were fighting with rich people." She looked up at him with worried eyes. "Are we in trouble?" Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward. "Mr. Cole, could I speak with you for a moment?" They stepped away while Emma ate her sandwich on the hallway bench. Mrs. Rodriguez was young, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor Nathan appreciated. "I wanted you to know that we're monitoring the situation," she said quietly. "Some of the other parents have seen the videos. There's been talk." "What kind of talk?" "Mostly supportive, actually, but a few have expressed concern about the attention Emma might receive. One parent asked if she should be removed from class to avoid disruption." Nathan felt anger flash through him. "Because her father stood up to a bully?" Because her father is currently trending on social media and this is an elementary school. Mrs. Rodriguez's voice was gentle. I'm not saying I agree with them. I'm saying you should be prepared for it to get complicated. It's already complicated. I know. For what it's worth, I watched the videos. All of them. She smiled slightly. You did the right thing. And Emma is clearly being raised by someone who values kindness. That matters. Nathan felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. Thank you.
But be prepared for tomorrow to be rough. Once that press conference happens, and yes, I've heard about it, the parent network is efficient, things are going to intensify. Emma might face questions, might face pushback from kids whose parents have opinions. Should I keep her home? That's your call. But I think Emma's stronger than you give her credit for. She talks about you constantly, about how you fix things for people, how you help neighbors, how you taught her to be kind even when it's hard. Mrs. Rodriguez looked toward where Emma sat, swinging her legs and eating her sandwich. Kids like that don't need to be hidden. They need to be supported. Nathan drove back to the apartment after dropping off Emma's lunch, his mind spinning with everything that was coming. The press conference, the continued fallout with Derek, the custody battle that was definitely going to intensify. His phone rang as he was parking. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Cole? This is Jennifer Watts from Channel 7 News. I was hoping to ask you a few questions about the incident at the Ashford Crown Hotel. Nathan hung up. It rang again immediately. Different number. Mr. Cole, this is Brad Stevens from the Metro Daily. We're running a story about... He hung up again. The third call was from his ex-wife. He almost didn't answer. But Jessica had Emma on weekends sometimes, had a right to know what was happening in their daughter's life, even if she'd forfeited the right to have an opinion about Nathan's choices. Nathan? Jessica's voice was tight. We need to talk. Hi, Jessica. Don't hi, Jessica me. You're all over the internet. Videos of you fighting with people at some charity event, lawyers making statements, and now I'm hearing about a press conference? What the hell is going on? I stood up for someone who was being harassed. That's what's going on. You made yourself a spectacle. You brought Emma to an adult event where you knew there would be conflict. I didn't know anything. I was invited. I brought our daughter because the invitation said, and guest, and she's my guest. What happened after that wasn't planned. But it happened, and now Emma's going to school where other kids have seen videos of her father screaming at wealthy businessmen. I didn't scream at anyone. And my lawyer says this is exactly the kind of instability we've been documenting. Nathan closed his eyes. Here it was. The thing he'd been dreading since Saturday night. Emma is fine, Jessica. She's happy, she's healthy, she's doing well in school. One incident at a charity event doesn't change that. One incident that's gone viral. One incident that has you hiring lawyers and getting involved with some billionaire woman. Yes, I looked her up. And putting our daughter in the middle of whatever this is. Our daughter gave a woman a piece of candy because she was crying. That's the extent of Emma's involvement. Until the press conference tomorrow, which I assume Emma will attend since you don't seem to understand appropriate boundaries. Nathan's grip tightened on the phone. Emma will be in school tomorrow, where she belongs. Good. Because Nathan, I'm telling you right now, if this gets worse, if this continues affecting Emma's life, I'm going back to court. I'm asking for full custody, and this time, I think I'll get it. She hung up before he could respond. Nathan sat in his truck, rain still falling, and felt the weight of everything pressing down. The HR meeting, the press conference tomorrow, Jessica's threats, Derek's vendetta, all of it spiraling out from one choice to sit at a table with a woman who needed someone to care. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Just saw that Channel 7 tried to call you. Don't talk to any press before tomorrow. Evelyn's orders. Already hung up on 3 reporters. Good. How are you holding up? Nathan thought about lying, about saying he was fine, that he could handle this, that everything was under control. My ex-wife just threatened to take Emma away. The phone rang immediately. Victoria. Tell me everything. So he did. Again. Because apparently his life had become a series of crisis conversations with a woman he'd known for less than 72 hours, but who felt more solid than people he'd known for years. Victoria listened, and when he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Nathan, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear me, really hear me. Okay.
Your ex-wife is scared. She's seen you all over social media, seen you connected to someone with money and influence, seen you stand up in ways she probably never saw during your marriage. And she's scared that she's losing control of the narrative she's built about you. The narrative that I'm unstable and irresponsible. Exactly. But here's the thing. That narrative only works if you give her ammunition, if you react emotionally, if you make rash decisions, if you let Derek Vaughn or anyone else push you into doing something stupid. Victoria's voice was firm. So you're not going to do that. You're going to show up tomorrow, stand beside me, let me say what needs to be said. Then you're going to go home, pick up Emma from school, make her dinner, be the father you've always been. And when Jessica tries to use this in court, Evelyn is going to bury her in documentation showing that everything you did was measured, appropriate, and in Emma's best interest. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's hard as hell. But you're not alone in it anymore. After they hung up, Nathan sat for a long time. Then he drove to the grocery store and bought ingredients for Emma's favorite meal, tacos with the seasoning packet that came in the kit, because the homemade stuff never tasted right to her. He picked her up from school, and they made dinner together, Emma chattering about her day, while Nathan chopped lettuce and tried not to think about tomorrow. That night, after Emma was asleep, Nathan pulled out his father's navy suit and looked at it. The suit he'd worn to the gala. The suit that had marked him as different, as not belonging. He hung it in the back of the closet and pulled out his regular clothes. Jeans, a button-down shirt, his work boots cleaned up but still obviously worn. If he was going to stand beside Victoria tomorrow, he was going to do it as himself, not as someone trying to fit into a world that didn't want him anyway. His phone buzzed one last time. Victoria. Tomorrow, we tell the truth. Whatever happens after, we handle it together. Together, Nathan typed back. And for the first time since Saturday night, he felt something that might have been hope. The morning of the press conference arrived with unseasonable sunshine, the kind that felt wrong for what was coming. Nathan stood in his bathroom at 5 a.m., staring at his reflection and trying to convince himself he could do this. The button-down shirt was wrinkled despite his best efforts with the iron. His jeans had a faded spot on one knee. His work boots were clean but worn, the leather creased from years of climbing ladders and kneeling on concrete floors. He looked exactly like what he was. And for once, he decided that was enough. Emma was still asleep when he checked on her, curled around her stuffed rabbit with one hand hanging off the bed. Nathan watched her for a moment, memorizing the peace on her face, knowing that after today, everything might change again. His phone showed 23 missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored all of them except the one text from Victoria, sent at 4:30 in the morning. Can't sleep, terrified. Please tell me you're still coming. I'm coming. You're going to be great. You're a terrible liar, but I appreciate the effort. Nathan made coffee and sat at his kitchen table, watching the sun come up over the parking lot outside. Somewhere across the city, Victoria was probably doing the same thing. Probably sitting in whatever expensive apartment she lived in, drinking expensive coffee, wearing expensive clothes, and feeling exactly as scared as he did. The thought was oddly comforting. Mrs. Chen knocked on his door at 7, right on time. She'd agreed to take Emma to school and pick her up afterward, no questions asked, though the look she gave Nathan suggested she had plenty of questions she was choosing not to voice. You be careful today, she said, her accent thick with concern. I see the videos. I know what you did. Very brave, very stupid, but brave. Thanks, Mrs. Chen. That little girl need her father. You remember that when you standing in front of cameras. Nathan kissed Emma goodbye, promised he'd see her after school, and drove downtown with his stomach in knots. The Ashford Crown Hotel looked different in daylight, less magical and more like what it actually was, an expensive building where expensive people did expensive things. News vans were already setting up outside, reporters checking equipment and looking bored in that particular way media people had before something potentially interesting happened. Nathan parked in the public garage 2 blocks away because he couldn't afford the hotel's parking rates. He walked toward the building, hands in his pockets, trying to look like he belonged. Mr. Cole! A reporter materialized beside him, young and eager, microphone already extended. Mr. Cole, can you comment on your relationship with Victoria Hale? Are the rumors true that you two are— No comment, Nathan said, walking faster. Is it true that Derek Vaughn tried to get you fired? Are you planning legal action? No comment. What about your daughter? How is she handling the attention? Nathan stopped walking. The reporter's eyes lit up, sensing a reaction. My daughter, Nathan said slowly, is 6 years old. And if you or anyone from your network approaches her, follows her, or tries to contact her in any way, you'll hear from my lawyer. Are we clear? The reporter's smile didn't falter. So you do have a lawyer. Can you confirm that Evelyn Park is representing you? Is Ms. Hale paying for your legal fees? Nathan walked away. Behind him, he heard the reporter talking into her microphone, already spinning his silence into a story. The hotel lobby was controlled chaos. Security guards Nathan didn't recognize were checking credentials at the door. Staff members rushed around with clipboards and earpieces, coordinating something that had clearly grown beyond a simple press conference. And in the center of it all, standing near the elevators and looking absolutely terrified despite her composed expression, was Victoria. She saw him and her entire face changed. Relief, gratitude, something else Nathan couldn't quite name. You came, she said, walking toward him. I said I would. People say a lot of things. She looked him over, taking in his jeans and work boots, and smiled. You look perfect. I look like a maintenance worker. Exactly. Perfect. Victoria took his hand, her palms slightly sweaty. Come on, Evelyn wants to brief us before we go in. They took the elevator to the third floor, to a suite that had been converted into a makeshift war room. Evelyn Park was there, dressed in a sharp gray suit, flanked by 2 younger associates who were typing furiously on laptops. She looked up when they entered. Nathan, good. We need to go over a few things. She gestured to the chairs across from her desk. First, the obvious. The ballroom is packed. Every major outlet is here. This is going to be broadcast live on at least 3 networks, and it'll be streaming everywhere else. Once Victoria starts talking, this becomes permanent. I understand, Victoria said. Do you? Because there's no walking this back. You're about to tell the world who you are, what you've built, and you're going to directly challenge one of the most vindictive men in this city's business community. Evelyn's expression was serious. Derek Vaughn will retaliate. He's probably already planning it. And Nathan, you're going to be caught in the crossfire. I'm already caught in it, Nathan said. It'll get worse. Jessica's lawyer has already filed a motion for emergency custody review. They're citing the media attention and what they're calling erratic behavior and poor judgment. We'll fight it, but it's going to be ugly. Nathan felt his chest tighten. When? Hearing's scheduled for Friday. 3 days. Evelyn pulled out a folder. I've already started building our defense. Character witnesses, documentation of your parenting, evidence of Derek's harassment. But Nathan, I need you to understand something. The next 72 hours are critical. Everything you do, everything you say, it all gets used as evidence, so I need you to be calm, measured, and completely boring. Boring, Nathan repeated. Boring. Go to work if they'll let you. Pick up Emma from school. Make dinner. Be the steady, reliable father you've always been. Don't engage with press. Don't respond to provocations. Don't give them anything they can twist. Victoria squeezed his hand. We'll get through this. You keep saying that. Because I believe it. Evelyn checked her watch. We're on in 20 minutes. Victoria, final run-through of your statement. Nathan, you're going to stand beside her. Don't speak unless directly asked a question, and even then, keep it brief. The focus stays on Victoria and her announcement. You're there as support, nothing more. They spent the next 15 minutes going over Victoria's statement again. Evelyn making small adjustments, softening some of the more aggressive language, adding context where needed. Nathan watched Victoria transform as they worked, saw her pull on the armor of professionalism like a suit she'd worn 1,000 times. You ready? Evelyn asked finally. Victoria looked at Nathan. Are we? No, but let's do it anyway. The walk to the ballroom felt endless. The same hallways Nathan had walked through on Saturday night, the same carpet under his feet. But everything was different now. Security was tighter. Staff members watched with open curiosity, and the energy in the air had changed from celebration to anticipation. They paused outside the ballroom doors. Nathan could hear the crowd inside, the low murmur of dozens of conversations, the clicking of camera equipment being tested. Last chance to run, Victoria said, though her hand was tight in his. You don't want to run. No, but I'm scared. Me too. She looked at him, really looked at him, and something passed between them. An understanding, maybe. A recognition that they were both about to step off a cliff and hoped there was something other than rocks at the bottom. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for all of this, for being exactly who you are." Then the doors opened and they walked into the ballroom. The space was packed, every seat filled, cameras lined up along the back wall, reporters standing in the aisles with notepads and recorders. Nathan recognized some faces from Saturday night, people who'd watched Derek humiliate them, people who'd laughed or looked away or pulled out their phones to record. And there, in the third row, sat Derek Vaughn, with his arms crossed, and a smile that promised violence. Victoria walked to the podium at the front of the room, Nathan beside her, and the conversations died. Every eye turned toward them, every camera focused. This was it. Victoria adjusted the microphone, her hands shaking slightly. She pulled out her prepared statement, unfolded it, then seemed to change her mind and set it aside. "My name is Victoria Hale," she said, her voice carrying across the silent room. "And 8 years ago, my father destroyed everything I'd ever known." The room stayed silent, but Nathan could feel the shift. This wasn't what they'd been expecting. Charles Hale was a criminal. He defrauded investors, destroyed retirement funds, ruined lives. He deserved to go to prison, and I'm not here to defend him or make excuses for what he did. Victoria's voice was steady now, stronger. But I was 22 years old when his crimes came to light. 22. And suddenly I was unemployable, unrentable, untouchable. My degree from an expensive university meant nothing because everyone knew my last name. My friends disappeared. My future evaporated, and I had two choices: give up or rebuild. She paused, letting that sink in. I chose to rebuild. I changed my name to Victoria Hayes. I moved to a city where nobody knew me. I worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, and learned everything I could about business. Real business, not the corrupt empire my father had built. And slowly, very slowly, I started creating something that was mine, something clean. Nathan watched the crowd. Some people were leaning forward, engaged. Others looked skeptical. Derek was whispering to the man beside him, probably already crafting his counter-narrative. 5 years ago, I founded Hale Property Group. We specialize in luxury hotels and commercial real estate. We now own properties in 6 states with a combined value of over $400 million. Victoria's voice was firm. And yes, that includes the Ashford Crown Hotel, where many of you attended a charity gala this past Saturday night. The room erupted, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, people turning to each other in shock. Victoria waited, letting the chaos wash over her, until Evelyn stepped forward and raised a hand. "Ms. Hale will take questions after her statement. Please hold until then." The noise died down reluctantly. Victoria continued, "I've kept my ownership quiet because I was afraid. Afraid that if people knew who I really was, they'd destroy what I'd built. Afraid that my father's sins would become mine all over again. And for 8 years, that fear controlled every decision I made." She looked directly at Derek. "Until Saturday night, when I was reminded that fear is just another form of prison." Derek's smile had disappeared. "On Saturday, at a charity event in my own hotel, I was publicly mocked. My family's tragedy was turned into entertainment. I was called a failure, a has-been, someone who didn't matter anymore. And I sat there and took it because I thought that was the price of surviving." Victoria's voice cracked slightly. Then Nathan Cole, a man I'd never met, chose to sit beside me. She gestured to Nathan, and suddenly every camera in the room swung toward him. He forced himself to stay still, to not flinch from the attention. Mr. Cole is a maintenance technician. He's a single father. He's exactly the kind of person that room full of wealthy, influential people decided didn't belong. But when he saw cruelty happening, when he saw someone being hurt, he made a choice. He chose kindness over comfort. He chose to stand with someone who was suffering instead of staying safe. Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears, and his 6-year-old daughter gave me a piece of candy because she saw I was sad and wanted to help. The room was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence. Listening, not just waiting. I'm standing here today to say that I'm done hiding. I'm Victoria Hale, daughter of a criminal, owner of a successful business, and a person who believes that dignity isn't measured in bank accounts. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. The candy wrapper, Nathan realized. Emma's mint candy. I've carried this with me every day since Saturday as a reminder that the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. That courage doesn't require wealth or influence. That sometimes the most important thing you can do is just sit beside someone and refuse to let them suffer alone. Victoria looked out at the crowd, at the cameras, at Derek's furious face. So I'm making an announcement. Hale Property Group is launching a new initiative focused on affordable housing for working families. We're starting with a $100 million investment in rehabilitating neglected properties and creating stable, dignified housing for people like Nathan Cole. People who work hard, who deserve better than struggling every month just to keep a roof over their heads. Her voice rose. And I'm personally inviting Mr. Cole to oversee this initiative because I trust his integrity more than I trust the credentials of anyone else in this room. Nathan's head snapped toward her. They hadn't discussed this. This wasn't part of the plan. Victoria met his eyes and smiled. If he'll accept, of course. The room exploded again. Reporters were standing now, shouting over each other, cameras pushing forward. Evelyn was trying to restore order, but it was chaos. And Derek Vaughn stood up, his face red with fury. This is absurd. His voice cut through the noise. You expect us to believe that you've secretly built a $400 million company? That you just happen to own this hotel? That this convenient timing isn't just a publicity stunt to— Mr. Vaughn, Evelyn's voice was ice. Ms. Hale is not taking questions from attendees. If you have concerns, you can address them through proper channels. Proper channels? Your client is making wild claims without evidence, attacking my reputation. Your reputation is attacking itself, Victoria said quietly, but the microphone caught it. I haven't mentioned you by name once, Derek, but it's interesting that you felt personally called out when I talked about cruelty and humiliation. Makes a person wonder why that struck such a nerve. The crowd laughed, actually laughed, and Derek's face went from red to purple. You're going to regret this, he said, pointing at Victoria. Both of you. I will personally make sure. Mr. Vaughn. Evelyn stepped forward, her phone already out and recording. You're threatening my clients in front of dozens of witnesses and live cameras. Please continue. My litigation team would love the material. Derek looked around, seemed to realize where he was, what he was doing. He grabbed his coat and stormed out, two of his associates scrambling to follow. The ballroom watched him go, and then someone started clapping. Just one person at first, then another, then the whole room was applauding. Not for Derek leaving, for Victoria standing there, for what she'd said, for the courage it took to reveal everything. Nathan felt something in his chest, something that might have been pride or hope, or the beginning of believing that maybe this could actually work. Victoria fielded questions for the next 45 minutes. About her company, about the housing initiative, about her father's crimes, and how she'd rebuilt. She was calm, professional, and devastatingly honest. When reporters tried to make it sensational, she brought it back to facts. When they asked about Nathan, she praised him without making him a symbol. When they asked about Derek, she simply said that some people's behavior spoke for itself. Finally, Evelyn called time. Ms. Hale has a business to run. Full documentation of Hale Property Group's ownership and financials will be available on our website by end of day. Thank you all for coming. They escaped through a side door, Evelyn leading them through service corridors Nathan recognized from his maintenance work. Staff members watched them pass with undisguised interest, and Nathan wondered how long it would take for this to spread through the building's workforce. Back in the third-floor suite, Victoria collapsed into a chair and put her head in her hands. Oh my God, I can't believe I did that. You were perfect, Evelyn said, already typing on her phone. Derek's outburst was a gift, made him look unstable and vindictive. Several reporters are already running with that angle. I offered Nathan a job. We didn't discuss offering him a job. I noticed. Evelyn looked at Nathan. Thoughts? Nathan sat down slowly. I don't know anything about managing housing initiatives. You know about maintenance. You know what working families need because you are one. You know the difference between cosmetic fixes and actual quality. Victoria looked up at him. And I trust you. That's worth more than experience. Victoria, I can't just quit my job and the salary is $120,000 a year plus benefits, including legal support for custody matters. She said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather. Nathan felt the floor drop out from under him. What? I'm serious. This isn't charity. I need someone to run this program who actually cares about doing it right. Someone who won't cut corners to save money or treat people like statistics. Someone who remembers what it's like to struggle. Victoria's voice softened. I need you, Nathan. And honestly, after what we just did down there, I think you need this too. He thought about the apartment complex where he worked, about Marcus covering his shifts, about Derek's influence in the HR meeting and the constant fear that one wrong move would cost him everything. He thought about Emma, about custody hearings and Jessica's lawyer using his job against him, calling him unstable because he worked maintenance and couldn't afford a bigger apartment. He thought about the $120,000 that would change everything. I need to think about it, he said finally. Of course. Take your time. Victoria stood up. But Nathan, you were right that day in the cafe. I'm tired of being afraid, and I think you are too. Evelyn's phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, and her expression darkened. We have a problem, she said, hanging up. That was my associate at the courthouse. Jessica's lawyer just filed an emergency motion claiming that Nathan's appearance at the press conference proves he's using Emma for publicity. They're asking for immediate supervised visitation only, pending the Friday hearing. Nathan felt his stomach drop. They can't do that. They can ask. Whether a judge will grant it is another question. Evelyn was already gathering papers. I need to get down there and file our response. Nathan, go home. Pick up Emma from school like normal. Document everything, times, activities, conversations. Be the most boring, stable parent in history. What about the job offer? Victoria asked. Doesn't exist yet. Not officially. Nathan's a maintenance worker who attended a press conference to support a friend. That's the story. Nothing else. Evelyn looked at Nathan. Can you hold off on making any major life changes for about 72 hours? Yeah, I can do that. He left the hotel through the loading dock, avoiding the press still gathered at the front entrance. His truck was where he'd left it, now with a parking ticket on the windshield because apparently even emotional breakthroughs didn't exempt you from 2-hour parking limits. Nathan drove home in a daze, Victoria's words echoing in his head. $120,000. Legal support for custody matters. A chance to do something that actually mattered instead of just surviving day to day. But also the risk, the attention. The way Jessica's lawyer would spin it as Nathan being irresponsible, taking handouts from rich women, making decisions based on emotion instead of Emma's best interests. His phone rang. Marcus. Holy shit, man. Holy shit. You're all over every channel. You and Victoria Hale just dropped a bomb on Derek Vaughn. I noticed. Is it true? About the job? About the housing initiative? I don't know. Maybe. It's complicated. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Nathan, I've known you for 6 years. I've watched you bust your ass for a paycheck that barely covers rent. I've watched you miss Emma's school events because you had to work double shifts. I've watched you choose between fixing your truck and buying groceries. He paused. If someone's offering you a way out, take it. It's not that simple. Yeah, it is. You're just scared it'll get taken away, so you're telling yourself you don't deserve it. Marcus's voice was firm. But you do, man. You absolutely do. After they hung up, Nathan sat in his apartment and tried to process the morning, the press conference, Victoria's revelation, the job offer that could change everything or destroy what little stability he had left. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. This is Derek Vaughn. You made a mistake today, both of you. Enjoy the attention while it lasts. Nathan deleted it. Then he screenshot it and sent it to Evelyn with a timestamp. Her response came immediately. Perfect. Keep doing exactly that. He picked up Emma from school at 3, watching for reporters or cameras, but finding only the usual crowd of parents in minivans. Emma ran to him like she always did, backpack bouncing, face bright with 6-year-old energy. Daddy, Mrs. Rodriguez said you were on TV. Sort of. I was at a press conference with Miss Victoria. Is she your girlfriend? Nathan almost laughed. No, sweetheart. She's my friend. Emma's friend Lucy says her mom says that you're dating a billionaire and that's why you're famous. Lucy's mom doesn't know what she's talking about. They went home and Nathan made dinner, chicken nuggets, and mac and cheese because it was Emma's favorite and he needed something simple and normal. They ate together at the kitchen table while Emma told him about her day, about art class and recess, and how Tommy Peterson had eaten paste again even though everyone knew you weren't supposed to. Normal, boring, exactly what Evelyn had told him to be. After Emma went to bed, Nathan's phone rang. Victoria. How are you? Tired, confused, possibly having a breakdown. He paused. You really meant it? About the job? Every word. Nathan, I'm about to build something that could actually help people. Real people, not just numbers on a spreadsheet. And I can't do it alone. I need someone who understands what it's like to choose between paying rent and fixing your car. Someone who knows the difference between affordable housing that works and affordable housing that's just gentrification with better PR. I don't have any qualifications. You have empathy. You have integrity. You showed up in a ballroom full of people who wanted to humiliate me, and you sat down anyway. That's the qualification that matters. She took a breath. But I understand if you need time. If you need to wait until after the custody hearing, until things settle down. I'm not going anywhere. Thank you, Nathan said quietly, for all of this. For standing up there today and telling your story. For offering me something I never thought I'd have. Thank you for reminding me why it matters. They talked for another 20 minutes, about nothing important. About Emma's school day, and Victoria's meetings, and the way Derek had looked when he stormed out. Easy conversation, the kind that felt like breathing. When they finally hung up, Nathan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about choices and consequences and the strange way life could change in 72 hours. His phone buzzed one last time. A text from Evelyn. Filed our response to Jessica's emergency motion. Judge denied it. Emma stays with you on regular schedule. Hearing still set for Friday. Get some sleep. You earned it. Nathan felt something in his chest unclench. Not everything. Not the fear about Friday or the uncertainty about the job or the knowledge that Derek Vaughn was planning retaliation. But enough. Enough to sleep. Enough to hope. Enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, doing the right thing could actually work out. The 3 days between the press conference and the custody hearing moved like water and concrete at the same time. Hours that dragged, and then suddenly it was Friday morning, and Nathan was standing outside the courthouse in a borrowed suit that fit better than his father's, but still felt like a costume. Evelyn met him on the steps, carrying a briefcase that looked like it weighed more than Emma. You ready? No. Good. Confidence would make you look arrogant. She checked her watch. Jessica's lawyer is Robert Brennan. He's going to paint you as unstable, impulsive, someone who prioritizes attention over Emma's well-being. He's going to use the gala, the press conference, the viral videos. He's going to make it sound like you're using your daughter for sympathy. I'm not. I know, but we need to prove it. Evelyn pulled out her tablet. I've got school records showing Emma's grades, attendance, teacher evaluations. I've got affidavits from Mrs. Chen, from Marcus, from Emma's pediatrician. I've got financial records showing you've never missed child support, never been late on anything related to Emma's care. And I've got the videos from the gala, which actually help us because they show you protecting Emma, removing her from a hostile situation, making her welfare your priority. Nathan's stomach was doing complicated things. What about Victoria's job offer? It hasn't been formally made yet, not on paper, so legally, it doesn't exist. Evelyn's smile was sharp. And even if it did, accepting a legitimate job offer isn't evidence of instability. It's evidence of professional growth. They walked into the courthouse together, through metal detectors, and past people waiting for their own hearings, their own moments of having their lives decided by strangers. The family court was on the 3rd floor, a room that tried to look friendly with pastel paint and soft lighting, but still felt like exactly what it was, a place where families broke apart. Jessica was already there, sitting beside her lawyer. She looked expensive, put together in a way Nathan remembered from when they'd first met, before Emma and Bill's and the slow realization that they wanted different things from life. Her husband sat behind her, the man with the nice house and the stable job, looking like an extra in someone else's story. Jessica's eyes met Nathan's across the room. He couldn't read her expression. Regret, maybe, or determination. Or just the tiredness that came from fighting too long over something that should have been simple. Robert Brennan stood when the judge entered, Judge Patricia Morrison was in her 60s with gray hair and reading glasses and the kind of face that suggested she'd heard every excuse, every lie, every desperate parent trying to explain why they deserved their children. "We're here for an emergency review of custody arrangement in the matter of Emma Cole," she said, looking at her notes. "Ms. Reeves, you filed the motion. Your grounds?" Jessica stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Your Honor, I filed for review because my ex-husband has demonstrated a pattern of unstable behavior and poor judgment that I believe puts our daughter at risk." Nathan felt Evelyn's hand on his arm, a silent reminder to stay calm. "Specifically?" Judge Morrison asked. Brennan stepped forward. "Your Honor, on Saturday, March 18th, Mr. Cole took his 6-year-old daughter to a high-profile charity gala where he knew there would be alcohol, adult situations, and the potential for conflict. During that event, he became involved in a public altercation that has since gone viral on social media, exposing Emma to millions of viewers without her consent. The altercation was someone else harassing a woman at her table," Evelyn said. Mr. Cole intervened to stop harassment. The videos show this clearly. "The videos show Mr. Cole creating a scene at an inappropriate venue for a child," Brennan countered. Then, 4 days later, he appeared at a press conference with that same woman, a billionaire he'd just met, standing beside her while she made dramatic revelations about her business holdings. This suggests a pattern of impulsive decision-making, of prioritizing attention and drama over Emma's stability. Judge Morrison looked at Nathan. "Mr. Cole, why did you take your daughter to a charity gala?" Nathan stood up. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. The invitation said, "And guest. I'm a single father. My daughter is my guest to everything. I thought it would be educational for her, seeing how charity events work, how people help others. I didn't know there would be conflict. I didn't plan any of what happened. But when conflict arose, you engaged with it rather than leaving. I sat at a table with someone who was being publicly humiliated. That's not engagement, Your Honor. That's basic human decency." "And the press conference?" "I attended to support a friend who'd asked for my help. Emma was in school. She wasn't present. It had nothing to do with her." Judge Morrison looked at her notes. "Ms. Park, what's your client's position?" Evelyn stood and Nathan saw why Victoria had chosen her. She had presence, authority, the kind of certainty that made you believe her even before she started talking. "Your Honor, my client is a devoted father who's been raising his daughter alone for 2 years since Ms. Reeves left their marriage for another relationship. In that time, Emma has thrived. Her school records show excellent grades, perfect attendance, and teacher evaluations that consistently praise both Emma's behavior and Mr. Cole's involvement in her education." She pulled out documents, handing copies to the judge and Brennan. "Mr. Cole has never missed a child support payment, never been late to a pickup or drop-off, never failed to attend a school event or doctor's appointment. Emma's pediatrician describes her as healthy, well-adjusted, and clearly loved. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, has provided an affidavit stating that Emma frequently talks about her father with obvious affection and that she's never shown any signs of neglect or instability. And yet," Brennan said, "Mr. Cole took her to an event where she witnessed her father in a confrontation with wealthy businessmen, where she was filmed and posted online without consent. Emma gave another adult a piece of candy because that adult was crying," Evelyn interrupted. "That's what the videos show. A 6-year-old being kind. If Ms. Reeves is arguing that teaching children kindness is evidence of bad parenting, I'd love to hear that reasoning." Judge Morrison held up a hand. "Ms. Reeves, I want to hear from you directly. What's your concern here? What do you think is happening with Emma?" Jessica stood again. She looked uncomfortable, and Nathan wondered if this had been her idea or her lawyer's, or her new husband's, who wanted the appearance of a complete family without the complication of a father who was suddenly famous. "Your Honor, I'm worried that Nathan is making decisions based on his own needs rather than Emma's. This woman, Victoria Hale, he barely knows her, but he's accepting job offers from her, appearing at her press conferences, getting involved in her business conflicts with powerful people. That's not stability. That's objection," Evelyn said. "Mr. Cole hasn't accepted any job offer, and even if he had, accepting employment is not evidence of instability." "But the nature of their relationship," Jessica started. "The nature of their relationship is friendship," Evelyn said firmly. "Ms. Hale is a successful businesswoman who's launching a housing initiative. She's asked Mr. Cole to consult because of his background in property maintenance and his understanding of working-class housing needs. This is a professional relationship that could potentially lead to better employment for Mr. Cole, which would only benefit Emma. Judge Morrison was reading something on her tablet, frowning slightly. Ms. Reeves, I'm looking at the custody arrangement. You have Emma every other weekend and alternating holidays. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. And in the 2 years since separation, how many weekends have you actually exercised your custody? Jessica's lawyer whispered something to her. She looked pale. I've had some work conflicts, and my husband travels for business, so the timing isn't always... According to the documentation Ms. Park provided, you've taken Emma for 9 weekends in the past 6 months. That's less than half your scheduled time. Judge Morrison looked up. And you're asking me to reduce Mr. Cole's custody because he took his daughter to a charity event? Your Honor, the concern is the pattern of behavior. The pattern I see is a father who shows up consistently for his daughter, while her mother requests custody reductions despite barely using the custody time she already has. Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. Ms. Reeves, I'm going to be direct with you. This motion feels like it's about your ex-husband's sudden public profile, not about Emma's welfare. That's not, Jessica started. I've read the affidavits. I've watched the videos. I've looked at Emma's school records and medical history. What I see is a child who's doing well in her father's care. What I don't see is any evidence that Mr. Cole's judgment is compromised or that Emma is at risk. She looked at Brennan. Unless you have something substantive beyond he went to a party and stood up to a bully, this motion is denied. Nathan felt his knees go weak. Evelyn's hand on his arm tightened. Your Honor, Brennan tried one more time. We believe that Mr. Cole's association with Miss Hale represents a potential what? Potential for him to have a stable job? Potential for him to improve his financial situation? Potential for him to model healthy friendships for his daughter? Judge Morrison removed her glasses. Mr. Brennan, I've been doing this for 23 years. I know the difference between legitimate concern and a parent who's uncomfortable with their ex moving on with their life. Motion denied. Custody remains unchanged. We're done here. She stood and left, and just like that, it was over. Nathan sat down hard in his chair. He could hear Jessica arguing with her lawyer in sharp whispers, could feel Evelyn beside him gathering papers, could sense the people in the gallery shifting and preparing for the next case. But all he could think was, Emma stays with me. Emma stays with me. Emma stays with me. Breathe, Evelyn said quietly. You're going to want to breathe. He did, and it felt like the first real breath he'd taken in 5 days. Jessica approached as they were leaving, her husband staying back by the door. She looked smaller somehow, less certain than she had when this started. Nathan. Jessica. Can we talk? Just for a minute? Evelyn looked at Nathan, asking permission with her eyes. He nodded, and she stepped away to give them privacy. Jessica twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit he remembered from their marriage. I'm sorry about all this. Robert said we had a strong case, that the videos showed poor judgment, that... She stopped. I'm sorry. Why did you do it? Nathan asked. The anger he'd been holding back leaked into his voice. We had an arrangement. It was working. Emma was happy. Why try to take that away? Because I saw you on TV standing beside a billionaire and I panicked. Jessica's voice broke. I panicked because you looked confident and strong, and you were defending someone who needed help, and I realized I'd never seen you like that when we were together. And it made me wonder if I'd made a mistake, if maybe I gave up on us too soon. Nathan stared at her. You left me for another man, Jessica. You wanted stability and money and things I couldn't give you. You made your choice. I know. And I'm not trying to undo that. Mark is good to me. He's stable. We have a nice life. She wiped her eyes. But seeing you on those videos, seeing Emma give that woman candy because you taught her to be kind, it reminded me that you're a good person, a really good person, and I tried to take Emma away from that because I was jealous. That's not a reason, Jessica. That's not even close to a reason. I know. I'm sorry. She looked at him, really looked at him. You're going to be okay, aren't you? You and Emma, even if I'm not part of it anymore. Nathan thought about the question, about the apartment they lived in and the job he might take and the woman who'd offered him a chance at something better. About Victoria carrying Emma's candy wrapper in her pocket and Judge Morrison saying Emma was clearly loved. "Yeah," he said, "we're going to be okay." Jessica nodded. Then she turned and walked back to her husband, and Nathan watched her go without feeling much of anything at all. Outside the courthouse, Evelyn was on her phone, already moving to her next case. She hung up when she saw Nathan. "You good?" "Getting there." "Jessica won't file again, not after that. Judge Morrison basically told her to back off or face sanctions." Evelyn smiled. "You're clear, Nathan. You and Emma are clear." He should have felt relief, joy, something big and overwhelming. Instead, he just felt tired and grateful and ready to go home. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. I know Victoria's paying you, but thank you. You made my job easy. Good dad, clean record, opposing counsel with a weak case. I've won harder battles." She paused. "Take the job, by the way. The one Victoria offered. Take it." "How do you know I haven't already?" "Because you're scared it'll disappear, because you don't believe you deserve it, because you've spent so long in survival mode that you can't recognize an actual opportunity when it's standing in front of you." Evelyn's voice was kind but firm. "Take the job. Build the housing program. Let yourself have something good." Nathan picked Emma up from school that afternoon, and she knew immediately that something had changed. Kids were like that. They could read adult emotions better than adults could. "Did you win?" she asked in the truck. "Win what, sweetheart?" "The thing with Mommy. Mrs. Chen said you had to go talk to a judge about me living with you." Nathan glanced at her in the rearview mirror, 6 years old and already too perceptive. "Yeah, baby, I won. You're staying with me. I wasn't going to leave anyway," Emma said matter-of-factly. "I told Mommy that on the phone last week. I said I live with Daddy, and that's how it is." Nathan almost drove off the road. "You told her what?" "I said I love her, but I live with you because you make me breakfast and help with homework, and you let me stay up late sometimes to watch movies." She swung her feet against the car seat. "Are we going to see Miss Victoria again?" "Yeah, I think so." "Good. I like her. She's sad, but she's trying not to be. Like you." Nathan didn't know what to say to that, so he drove home and made dinner, and after Emma went to bed, he sat on his couch with his phone in his hand, staring at Victoria's number. He could keep going the way he had been. Keep fixing air conditioners and toilets, keep scraping by, keep playing it safe. It was familiar. It was what he knew. Or he could take a chance on something that scared him. On a job he wasn't qualified for, and a friendship that had started in a ballroom, and a woman who believed he was worth investing in. He called Victoria. She answered on the first ring. "Nathan, how did it go?" "Judge denied Jessica's motion. Custody stays the same." "Oh, thank God." He could hear the relief in her voice. "I've been checking my phone all day. Evelyn said she'd text me, but I know she was in court and I didn't want to bother her. I'm babbling. Sorry. I'm just really happy for you." "Victoria." "Yeah?" "I want to take the job, if it's still available." Silence on the other end. Then quietly. "Are you sure?" "No. I'm terrified. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'll probably screw it up, and I'm not qualified for any of this." That's not a great pitch for employment. But I want to try. I want to build something that actually helps people. I want Emma to see that taking chances on good things is worth the risk. He paused. "And I want to work with someone who sees me as more than just a guy who fixes toilets." "Nathan Cole, you were never just a guy who fixes toilets. Not to me." They talked for 2 hours about the housing program and what it would look like, and how Nathan's first project would be rehabilitating a small apartment complex on the east side, the same neighborhood where he currently lived, where he knew exactly what working families needed because he was one. 3 months later, Nathan stood in the parking lot of Riverside Commons, the newly renovated apartment complex that had once been a decaying building nobody wanted to live in. The transformation hadn't been magic. It had been work. Months of coordinating with contractors, arguing with suppliers, learning building codes and safety regulations, and the 1,000 small details that went into making a place livable. But it was done. 24 units of genuinely affordable housing with rents set at what a single parent making minimum wage could actually afford. With laundry rooms that didn't eat quarters and parking lots with actual lighting and playgrounds that were safe for kids. Victoria stood beside him, watching the first families move in with their boxes and furniture and the kind of cautious hope people had when good things happened unexpectedly. "You did this," she said. "We did this." "No, you did the hard part. I just wrote checks." She smiled. "How does it feel?" Nathan watched a mother and her 2 kids walk into their new apartment, the woman stopping at the door to run her hand along the fresh paint, like she couldn't quite believe it was real. "It feels like something that matters," he said. Emma ran across the parking lot, her backpack bouncing, Marcus's daughter Sophia right behind her. The two had become inseparable over the past months, united by having dads who worked too much and a shared love of mint candy. "Daddy! Miss Victoria! We found a cat by the playground." "Is it a stray?" Nathan asked. "I don't know. It's orange and it let me pet it, and Sophia says we should keep it." "We're not keeping a cat, sweetheart." "But Daddy, we'll make sure it has food and water and we'll ask if anyone's missing a cat, but we're not keeping it tonight." Emma's face fell into the pout that meant she was going to argue. Then she seemed to remember something and pulled out her trump card. "What if Miss Victoria wants a cat?" Victoria laughed, surprised. "Oh, so now I'm the one adopting strays?" "You adopted Daddy," Emma said, with perfect 6-year-old logic. Nathan felt his face go hot. "Emma, that's not... Victoria didn't..." "She kind of did, though," Victoria said, her eyes sparkling. "Found you in a ballroom, brought you home, gave you a job. That's basically how cat adoption works. I'm not a cat. You're grumpy in the mornings before coffee. You're definitely cat-like." Emma giggled, and Sophia joined in, and Nathan realized this was his life now. Standing in a parking lot with the woman who'd changed everything, watching families move into homes he'd helped create, listening to his daughter laugh with her best friend. It wasn't perfect. The housing program had challenges, funding issues, zoning battles, people like Derek Vaughn, who fought them at every turn. Nathan still woke up some mornings convinced he'd fail, convinced he wasn't qualified, convinced that any minute someone would realize he was just a maintenance worker pretending to be something more. But then he'd drive to a site and solve a problem nobody else had thought of because he'd actually lived these struggles. Or he'd get an email from a single mother thanking him for creating a home she could afford. Or he'd watch Emma play in a parking lot that was safe because he'd insisted on proper lighting even when the contractor said it was too expensive. And he'd remember that sometimes the most qualified person for a job was the one who understood why it mattered. Derek Vaughn had tried to retaliate, of course, filed complaints, spread rumors, used his influence to create obstacles. But Victoria had been right. She had better resources. And more importantly, she had the truth on her side, documentation of every harassment attempt, every vindictive action, until even Derek's own firm quietly suggested he might want to take a sabbatical and let things cool down. The last Nathan had heard, Derek was living in Arizona, working for a smaller company, his reputation in the city permanently damaged by his very public meltdown at Victoria's press conference. Nathan didn't take pleasure in it. He just felt grateful it was over. "Daddy, you're thinking too hard again," Emma said, pulling on his hand. "Come see the cat." So he did. He let his daughter lead him to the playground where an orange tabby was lounging in the sun, completely unimpressed by the attention of 2 excited girls. Victoria followed, and Marcus appeared from one of the units carrying his toolbox. "Told them not to adopt the cat," Marcus said. "Same," Nathan agreed. "They're going to adopt the cat." "Oh, absolutely." The cat looked at Nathan with yellow eyes that suggested it had already made its decision about who would be providing dinner. Emma was already naming it. "Mango, because he's orange like a mango." And Sophia was nodding enthusiastically. Victoria's phone rang. She checked it, smiled, and showed Nathan the screen. It was a news alert about Hale Property Group's expansion into 3 new cities, about the affordable housing initiative that was being called a model for corporate responsibility. "We're doing something right," she said quietly. "Yeah, we are." That evening, after the families had settled in and Emma and Sophia had been convinced that Mango the cat would be fine outside overnight with food and water, Nathan and Victoria sat on the steps of Building 3 watching the sunset paint the parking lot orange and gold. "You know what I realized today?" Victoria said. "What?" "That night in the ballroom when you sat down at my table, I thought you were being kind to me, showing me mercy or charity or whatever." She looked at him. "But that's not what it was it? What was it then?" You were showing yourself that you were the kind of person who sits down instead of walking away. You were deciding who you wanted to be. She smiled. And it just happened to change my life in the process. Nathan thought about that. About the man he'd been before the gala, exhausted and afraid and just trying to survive. About the choices he'd made that night and every day since. You changed my life too, he said. We changed each other's lives. That's better. Emma appeared from wherever she'd been exploring, dragging a reluctant Mango in her arms. The cat looked deeply offended but was purring anyway. Daddy, Mango says he wants to come home with us. Mango spoke to you? Yes, in cat language. Emma, we talked about this, but he doesn't have a family. And Mrs. Chen said nobody's missing an orange cat, and he's all alone. Emma's eyes were wide, pleading. Like Miss Victoria was before you sat with her. Victoria made a choking sound that might have been laughter. Nathan looked at his daughter, at the cat, at Victoria trying not to laugh, and felt something in him give way. Fine. But you're responsible for feeding him and cleaning his litter box. And if he scratches the furniture, he goes back outside. Emma squealed and hugged the cat tighter. Mango's purring intensified. You're a pushover, Victoria said. Yeah, I know. They sat together as the sun finished setting, watching Emma play with Mango on the grass, listening to the sounds of families settling into their new homes. Somewhere inside the building, someone was cooking dinner, the smell of garlic and onions drifting through an open window. A child laughed. A TV played softly. Normal sounds. Home sounds. The kind of sounds Nathan had worked so hard to create. Thank you, he said to Victoria, for all of this. For believing I could do it. Thank you for proving me right. She paused. And Nathan, for what it's worth, I still have Emma's candy, the one from that night. I keep it in my desk drawer now, at the office. Every time I'm about to make a decision, I look at it and remember that the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. It was just a piece of candy. It was never just a piece of candy. It was a 6-year-old seeing someone in pain and deciding to help. That's the world we're trying to build here, isn't it? One where people help each other instead of walking past. Nathan looked at the apartment complex, at the families inside, at Emma playing in the grass with a cat she'd rescued because it was alone, and she remembered what that felt like. Yeah, he said. I guess it is. Later that night, after Emma and Mango were both asleep, the cat having immediately claimed Emma's bed as his territory, Nathan stood in his apartment and realized it didn't feel temporary anymore. Didn't feel like a place he was just surviving in until something better came along. It felt like home. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. Same time next week to review the new property acquisitions? I'll bring coffee. You always bring coffee. I should start bringing coffee. You pay my salary. I'll bring the coffee. Deal. And Nathan, I'm glad you sat down that night. Me too. He put his phone down and looked around his apartment, at Emma's drawings on the refrigerator, at Mango's new food bowl by the kitchen, at his work boots by the door, still scuffed but now carried different meaning, not just survival but purpose. In the end, it wasn't wealth or status or any of the things Derek Vaughn had tried to measure worth by. It was this: a daughter who knew how to be kind, a job that helped people who needed it, a friend who'd seen him at his most ordinary and decided that was enough. Sometimes the most important thing you could do was just sit down beside someone who needed you. And sometimes, if you were lucky, sitting down changed everything. Nathan thought about the ballroom, about Victoria sitting alone while a room full of people decided she didn't matter, about Emma's small hand in his and the choice he'd made to walk towards suffering instead of away from it. He thought about how easy it would have been to leave, to take Emma home, to avoid the confrontation, to stay safe and small and invisible. But he hadn't, and that choice, that simple, terrifying choice to care when it would have been easier not to, had led to everything that came after. The press conference, the job, the housing program, the families now sleeping in safe, affordable homes because someone had decided they were worth the investment. All of it traced back to one moment, one choice, one decision to sit down instead of walk away. Emma stirred in her room, called out softly for water. Nathan got it for her, tucked her back in, kissed her forehead, and whispered that everything was okay, that they were safe, that tomorrow would be good. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, he actually believed it. Because sometimes dignity wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about showing up, about choosing kindness when cruelty was easier, about sitting beside someone who needed you and refusing to let them face the world alone. And sometimes, if you were really lucky, that choice became the beginning of everything that mattered. Nathan turned off the lights and went to bed. A rescued cat purring at the foot of his daughter's bed, a text from a friend on his phone, and a job waiting for him in the morning that would help people who needed it. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better. It was real.